Do you have your... Let me find Carvalho first.
I don't need a mic, right?
No. He's going to be.
I'll give that to you. You're going to introduce
Well,
me.
I have this.
Okay, I'll just...
Recording in progress.
Did you turn yourself on?
I think I'm on. I think he's bringing it up over there. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've had a great set of sessions this afternoon. I'm delighted that so many of you are sticking with us. All right, thank you. So I am so excited to be able to introduce to you Superintendent of our public school system who really cares about children, really cares about giving them the opportunity to learn. I know that many superintendents are true believers in this, but I've never met any superintendent in our public school system who's so fundamentally committed, it just comes across through every pore in his body. So it's just a thrill for me to have Alberto Carvalho to speak with you. And I told him, I'm throwing you into the lion's den. This is not the place where you're going to get just sort of a natural, but of course he doesn't. This doesn't bother him at all because he's got to deal with the Los Angeles, and anybody who can tangle with the Los Angeles School Board and survive is extraordinary. And so far he has done well. But, the proof of his leadership comes out of Miami, where he starts as a physics teacher, and he becomes the superintendent of the Dade County school system, which is the third largest school system in the country. And he takes it from the bottom of all big city school systems to the top over the course of his 14 years. Now, you find a superintendent who's actually been in a big city school system for 14 years plus, and you realize that's somebody special. And so the only question I have is, why did he leave? And so I found out this morning, because he taught my class this morning, and he said, he heard my question. I said this morning, and he heard my question, and he says, well, I left because I wanted to show, because in Los Angeles, it's at the bottom of all big city school systems, and I wanted to show that I could do it again. And so he's on his way, and so anyhow, I'll leave it to him to tell the story. So, Alberto, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Thank you. Well, you don't seem so threatening from my vantage point. And I think the reason why is that You know, the spectrum of opportunity in America cannot be restricted. It needs to be augmented to serve all students, period. Paul is right. I've been superintendent for a long time, close to 15 years in Miami, and now about 2.5 years in Los Angeles. I was appointed chancellor of New York City schools, and last minute I decided not to go to New York for a number of reasons. I wanted to have the, the gold, silver, and bronze, the largest, second largest, and third largest districts in the country, to prove a fundamental point. And the point is that I believe that 23 is important. And if you believe, like me, that 23 is important, then all kids across America, regardless of zip code, regardless of state, should succeed. Why 23? Because they all possess 23 chromosomes, with very, very few exceptions. Which means if you're on East Coast or West Coast, North, South, you should be able to achieve. And the question must be asked, why aren't some achieving? Is it the kid's fault? Is it a lack of opportunity? Are we going to continue to blame all of the issues on somebody else? Parents don't sit in the classrooms of my school district. So yes, I want to encourage and empower parents. I want forceful, demand-driven reform, but I have a better chance of actually modifying aggressively the conditions of the environment that I control than attempting to change the conditions outside the environment I control. And I think that, by and large, defines the success that we had in Miami-Dade. And I believe it will define the success that we're beginning to see in Los Angeles Unified. But I'm curious, why in the world would people like you, individuals who believe and are in an environment of options, diverse options, and homeschooling for kids, and providers of publicly funded but independently delivered education, want to listen to somebody like me? And I'll tell you 3 things as to maybe constitute enough of a reason. Number 1, if there's one place, considering where America is today, where the shouting has substituted for honest, reasonable conversation, insult has substituted for respect, disagreement is the preferred option. If there's one place in America where we have a chance of creating a more powerful level of unity, it is through education. And I believe, as an American by choice, not by chance, I believe, as one of 6, being the only one who graduated high school, I believe, as an immigrant to this country, whose first job was a dishwasher in New York City, I believe, as someone who during my first year in this country traveled through 38 states working in construction, picking tomatoes and okra in farms, working as a day laborer, I believe someone like me who was once homeless at the age of 18, a year after I arrived, sleeping under a bridge blocks away from the office where years later I occupied the superintendent. I believe that the better chance for America actually resides with those who believe in education, period, without qualifiers. That is the one chance. It is the one powerful chance. So I have no problem speaking in this room because I believe that you believe in education. And I believe, more importantly, that you believe in children. And that's what I believe in. I want to create for children in the communities that I serve the opportunities that, unfortunately, my 5 siblings did not have. I want to create better conditions for them than the ones I encountered as a young kid. And unfortunately, I have to confess to you that 4 decades later, the conditions are faced are still repeated time and time again across the communities we serve. Something needs to change. And as you know, there are no superheroes who will come in and save us from ourselves. But there is peer-reviewed research. There is best practice. There are elements of success that we could look at, learn from, replicate, and amplify. Success is exportable. Everything else is as well. Failure, too, is exportable. So, some thoughts. When I became superintendent in Miami-Dade, the 3rd largest school system in America, with over 400 schools in excess of 340,000 students, where 80% of the students live at or below poverty level, where at least 20% of the students are English language learners, 12 to 13% have one or more disabilities. Take those set of conditions, those factors, put them in Los Angeles, and you have the same thing, just a bigger size of population. Same challenge. Same challenge. I remember becoming superintendent, and the graduation rate in Miami was at 56%. 10 schools were about to be shut down by the state of Florida because for the previous decade, those schools had proficiency rates in reading and mathematics at 10 or 11%. Schools where the chronic absenteeism and average daily attendance were woefully low. A system where only about a quarter of its students attended a high-quality, high-demand program of their choice. Something needed to change. Now, my best friend, and Paul's heard me tell this story multiple times, my best friend was that I became superintendent at the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. Great time to be a superintendent, because the nation embarked on the Great Recession. And if there's ever a time when you can do crazy things and blame it on the economy, that was the time. I am one who loves a crisis because I know how to navigate one. It gives you all of the backing, the excuses, the force, and the wind in all kinds of directions that you can actually force your way through in doing that which is right. So we leveraged the economic conditions to really reinvent a massive school system. And the results are compelling. I also decided back then, just like I have decided in LA, to personalize my own accountability for the toughest schools in the district. Let's have those schools actually report directly to me. In Miami, there were 100 such schools. In LA, there are 121 schools. They report to me. If I fail, fire me. But if I succeed, allow me to enlarge the canvas upon which I can do my work. So I'll fast forward. In Miami, it didn't take 10 years. I don't believe in educational reform that takes a decade to prove to be right. Because the question in the back of my mind is always, how many are you willing to lose until you perfect your skill set? How many? And can we do better? I'm also reminded that, education reform does not have to be slow. The things that actually take lift, the things that actually create altitude, move fast. I don't know about you, but I came here by plane. And I've never gotten on a plane where the pilot says, folks, we're going to try something different today. We're going to cruise down the runway very slowly, just for a different experience, because we want to try something different. No, don't try that. Get out of the plane. Because you know what? Airplanes need speed to lift. In education, I believe education reform needs to be fast, swift, on the basis of knowing what works and be unapologetic about the practice. That's the only way you actually overcome the gravitational pull of the status quo. You know what that sounds like, right? No, that's too inconvenient. That's too difficult. I'm comfortable just the way I am. And to the extent that that is the practice, we will always have those kids. You know who those kids are. Those kids who today are not performing, who are the children of parents who they themselves did not perform, who are the grandchildren of grandparents who never were able to break out of the cycle. So I got tired. As a teacher, I saw conditions that should not be acceptable to any child. As a principal, I did the same and decided to create my own schools. And yes, the entire time I was superintendent of Miami-Dade, I taught physics, and I opened and led my own school as a principal. You can look it up. iPrep Academy, one of the highest performing schools in the country, a pre-K through grade 14. Now in LA, I'm going to try something even better, because I don't believe in K-12 districts anymore. I want a B14, a birth through grade 14, where every single student leaves high school with at least 2 years of something. And that something, by the way, cannot simply be college or university. We did a great injustice in this country when we, in a very profound and meaningful and loud way, decreed that every kid was going to go to college. We ought to create conditions for every kid to go to college, but we ought to recognize also that not every kid will go to college. Some cannot, some don't want to. So what happens to them after 12 years? So I believe in career and technical education. And unfortunately, America abandoned it 3 decades ago, providing no place for many to land successfully. The things we do when we do not pay attention to the real thing. So the success we reached in Miami, and I'm going to summarize it for you very quickly, is really quite stunning. Paul said it. 16 years ago, Miami was at the bottom of all large urban districts in terms of the National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, performance, 4th and 8th grade. Graduation rates of 56%, as I mentioned. Very, very quickly, by transforming the leadership, refining professional development, incentivizing the best teachers to go into the most dramatically fragile conditions, by providing wraparound support systems, by creating demand-driven reform, not what I believe they want, but actually listening to the demands of the community, empowering parents through a new level of parental engagement, which when I speak about it with my colleagues, they think I'm crazy. Because I like to empower parents with information that allows them to actually understand what's happening in their kids' schools. I like to empower parents with information that actually puts them in a position of being demanding of what their children should get. I like to empower parents with knowledge about what it would take to lift the educational potential and opportunity for their own children. And then I like to provide parents the stage for them to actually shout at us. It is that positive pressure, it is that fire that actually moves large districts. Spaghetti dinners don't work. That's a theory of the past that actually never worked. So by reorganizing the system, cutting bureaucracy at the top, by creating boundless choice, by creating this attitude that one size fits none, in Miami-Dade, we took a district that was facing literally maybe a takeover by the state and turned it into the highest performing urban district in America. By the time I left, 90% graduation rate, 3/4 of the students in a program of their own choice, inclusive of magnet schools, career academies, single gender schools, inclusive of independent charter schools, affiliated charter schools. In fact, I opened the first district-managed charter schools in the entire country while in Miami. Performance soared not only in NAEP, state assessments. When I first became superintendent, this was a district that had dozens of F-rated schools. When I left it, 0 F-rated schools, 0 D-rated schools, and the first urban district in the state of Florida, rated A. #1 performer in advanced placement performance. #1 district in Cambridge education. Don't tell me it can't be done. But what I can tell you is it will not get done if you don't believe it can be done, and certainly it will not get done if you do not change course in an aggressive way and continue to do what you've always done. I can tell you that building coherence and systems of data that informed the practice was powerful in Miami. I can tell you also that identifying the lowest performing schools and dedicating the resources, but not only the resources, resource, strategy, monitoring, accountability, support, coaching, modeling, that's what works. And that's exactly what worked. Those 100 schools performed at a rate, at a pace, faster than the district improvement. That is why, for 2 assessment cycles by NAEP in a row, Miami-Dade's 4th graders, #1 performers in the country, 8th graders, #2 performers in the country in reading and mathematics based on tutor reporting. What that means is out of all the large urban districts in the country, 76 of them, Miami-Dade soared to the top. It is possible. It is possible. So Paul is right. Why in the world would I decide to leave Miami, where things were just humming along, and go to Los Angeles? I want to prove that 23 is important. I want to prove that our children, all with the same number of chromosomes, East Coast and West Coast, can actually perform at the same level of performance if we decide to reinvent ourselves, retool ourselves, reskill ourselves, and adjust our belief system. Because if we do not adjust our belief system, they will not succeed. And here I am, arriving in LA, where, quite frankly, the foundation for portfolio offerings is already established. LA has more offerings for all students than any other district that I've ever seen. You have affiliated charters, you have independent charters, you have magnet programs, you have pilot schools, you have semi-autonomous schools, autonomous schools. You have something for everyone. What LA has been lacking is a coherent approach that is data-informed, that allows us to do three things: recognize that which is working and adapt more of it, recognize that which is not working and adopt something, or recognize that is not working and abandon it. You and I know, for those of you who maybe have worked in education, we never like to let go of anything. We don't throw papers away, boxes, we need to box, keep everything. We have our own vaults in our classrooms because everything is important forever. And curriculum, textbooks, yes, we want them all. And we never ask the question, how good is it? How relevant is it? How impactful is it? How effective is it? So there's 3 A's define the work in LA today. I can tell you, having been there now a little bit over 2 years, choice is plentiful, choice is powerful. The systems that inform the system as a whole, allowing parents to actually know where the programs that best would suit their children's needs would be, not so powerful. Recognizing that not all schools need to be treated the same way, not so powerful. Recognize that the concept of earned autonomy is an important one, because if I have 10 schools and 5 of them are doing really great in terms of performance, attendance, financial management, 5 of them not so much, and out of those 5, 3 are in really critical care, and my best leadership is to dedicate equal amount of time, support, and examination to all, then I'm crazy. So earned autonomy is important. It frees me as an educator to actually allow those who are flying high to continue to fly high, allowing me to dedicate more time and resource to the ones who need most attention. By the way, is that not what we do as parents? Is that not what we do as human beings? Address the one who needs critical care first, right? And that's what we've done in LA now. So we created the Educational Transformation Office. We have expanded opportunities for quality choice in areas where currently it is not available. We decided to create a process by which universal transportation for all students is now available, eliminating the mobility challenge from families and kids, identifying the highest demand quality programs and franchising those out, making it available to everyone who wants them, as opposed to having just that one golden school so far away from most of the kids that most never have that experience. We decided also to create systems of data coherence, so no one can hide. Sometimes we don't want to look at the data because the data reveals something uncomfortable. I don't know how to create change unless I first understand the problem, the dimensions of the problem revealed by the data. So we now speak the same language and have trained our principals, our teachers, our believers on navigating that data, interpreting the data, and using the data in a powerful way to leverage educational opportunity for all kids. Let me tell you where we are now. Forget about Miami. In 2 years, after dealing with the devastating impact of the pandemic, recognizing that when I became superintendent in Los Angeles, chronic absenteeism was at 50%. Average daily attendance below 80%. Reading and math performance 6 to 7 years below the level that they were at right before the pandemic. A level of loss of regression without precedent in America. We went to work, and we made sure that everybody was held accountable and responsible. Number one, bring the kids to school, because I don't care where kids go to school, how talented the teachers are, they cannot teach the absent child. They have to be in school. Or if the school is at home, somebody needs to actually be educating them. Staying at home is not homeschooling. And that's why we knocked over 1 year on 34,000 doors. I have 30 chronically absent students assigned to me, and every one of my team has those students. And in 1 year, we reduced chronic absenteeism by 30%. We improved average daily attendance back to pre-pandemic levels. And the one data point I need and wanted, this year, every single grade level in reading and math across all student groups moved up in terms of reduction of distance from standard and the percentage of students meeting and exceeding performance. I cannot tell you how many years you'd have to go back, if ever, where attendance improved, chronic absenteeism decreased, where every single grade level in the 2 tested subject areas of reading and math, they all moved. The most beautiful thing, remember those 121 schools that report directly to me, the priority schools? The rate of improvement, particularly in grades 3, 4, and 5, 2 to 3 times the rate of improvement of the district. These were the schools that for decades never moved. Now, some people could argue, and Paul knows this to be true, if you're at the very bottom, obviously the statistical possibility of them growing faster is there. But it does not happen by itself. I've gone back and looked at 10 years, 15 years worth of data. What was happening in these schools? We made more progress in 1 single year than these schools made in 1 decade by changing everything. Yes, we added additional days to the calendar, 3 days. Yes, we created an opportunity for summer school for 120,000 students for an entire month. Yes, we have winter breaks for acceleration and enrichment. Yes, we have before and after school high dosage tutoring. Yes, we have decided to invest in interventionists and coaches, literacy and math, deploying them to these highest need schools. And yes, we have aligned great talent with great need, beginning with leadership. And it's working. To make it better, 2 years in a row with improved graduation rates, now at 87%, the highest level in LA's history. Are we done? Absolutely not. I need to be honest with you. In a lot of these schools, the proficiency rate is still at 30%. That's not acceptable. But it is absolutely trending in the right direction at the right pace and speed. I need at least 2 more years. 2 more years on the basis of growth. These schools will actually surpass district-wide performance. And the day when the unnatural becomes normal is the day you succeed. You see, Miami-Dade should not have succeeded the way it succeeded. But Miami-Dade decided to punch above its weight. And the day that happened, Miami-Dade surpassed all other districts. And by the way, it doesn't take a lot. The practices that we know actually work with kids are well known to us. I don't believe that what America is facing is a skill set deficit. It's not that we don't know what to do in the classroom or in schools or in districts. We actually do. It's not a skill set deficit, it's a will set proposition. We know exactly what works. Often we do not want to catch the flack and the fire and the punishment and the judgment and the insult and the condemnation that comes with educational reform that actually works, because it is disruptive. It is inconvenient. It forces people to do things they had not necessarily done before. But we know it works. I'll give you one additional example. A lot of folks say there is a lack of enough teachers across this country, and that is true. We need more teachers. But let's also ask the question, where are a lot of our teachers? When I got to LA, I inherited a condition where 750 teachers or 750 classes in Los Angeles by spring break did not have a teacher. And when I look back, there were some schools that did not have that teacher for 2 to 3 years in a row. Meaning kids were being taught by a daily substitute without a guarantee that that sub even had a bachelor's degree. And then we wonder why the results. Can we even speak a little bit about equity as opposed to those schools that are always staffed with teachers who want to be there, as opposed to schools where the conditions are so difficult, making it almost impossible for teachers to be there? So I remember my first week on the job, getting in the elevator up and down, and people running into me and says, welcome to Los Angeles. I just love public education, so welcome. And I kept listening to that until we enter spring break, and I asked staff, let me see the qualifications of the people who work in central office. And if they were once a teacher and they have a credential to be a teacher, let's invite them to love kids closer to where the kids actually are. And by the end of spring break, guess what? We went from 750 vacancies to 0 vacancies. And then we opened last school year with 0 teacher vacancies. And now we opened this school year. Guess with how many vacancies? No, we had 9. Out of 30,000 teachers. So we need to ask ourselves, are we really doing all we can to help our kids? I believe in the power of education for a number of reasons, and I detailed those for you. But ultimately, as I said, as a proud American by choice, not by chance, I believe in the impact that education has in our communities, in our nation. Otherwise, I would not be doing what I do. I believe LA will beat Miami. I'm sorry, Miami. And it needs to at least reach that level. And New York needs to beat Miami and LA. And Chicago needs to beat all of them. And Detroit needs to be lifted. And Atlanta, Georgia, and rural districts across the country. America needs to have its children rise up to the level we know they can be at. But that will not happen unless we change ourselves. Beginning with changing attitudes, beginning by changing the political discourse when it comes to education. In a class this morning, I commented to the students that this will be the second, perhaps the third presidential election cycle where education, from a policy perspective, is really not being discussed. Not being discussed. And if you don't discuss something that you say is important, then it must not be important. And when we discuss it on the fringes of the most extreme issues, never really focusing on what happens in a classroom. And that's a shame. And that's a shame. So I close by not only thanking you for your time and not heckling at me, at least not now, but by joining anyone and everyone who believes that a better America relies as a function of a well-educated population. What that constitutes for each one of us can be debatable, but there are some basics we can all subscribe to. If we just subscribe to those fundamental basics of what a good education is, however it is packaged and delivered, then we become a better nation. I believe in that. I believe in that because I have no other choice. And I close by telling you something much like I opened my conversation with you. I was one of 6 born into abject poverty, an immigrant to this country who did not speak English when I first arrived. And after traveling those 38 states, I arrived in Miami, and I felt comfortable in Miami because nobody spoke English there either. Years later, I believe in this. I believe in this with everything I can muster. And here's the truth. I'm a father to a 31-year-old daughter. I know what I did for her. And I know how she values education. There's no guarantee that every child has the privilege that your child has. The day we augment the care and the courage to everyone beyond those who are genetically connected to us, and slay the dragons that impede many of us from doing what we can for them beyond our own, is the day we transform the reality of American education. I believe in that. I trust in that. And I close by leaving you with this one thought. My father passed away 17 years ago. When I left my country, he told me, Alberto, wherever you go, there you are. And I thought, well, that's a remarkably silly statement. Of course, if I go somewhere, I'm going to be there and not be here. It took me a while to understand what Dad meant. No matter where you go, there you are. It's not the suit and the tie. It's not the degree. It's not the power or possession. It's really who you are, what your why is, and ultimately how you use your why. I have decided long ago, on the basis of what worked for me must work for everybody like me. I see myself in the faces of the kids I serve. And why not? Why not make this moment the moment where that boundless opportunity that all children deserve becomes the reality, not the exception? I believe in that day. And that is why 23 chromosomes in Miami, 23 chromosomes in LA tell me that they can all achieve at the highest levels. Thank you very much. Take some questions now.
Thank you.
Take some questions now.
You want to take some?
Yeah.
All right, listen. I said no questions. Of course, he says, oh, I have to have. You know he knows you have questions. But we have to start drinking.
Oh, well, let me not be the one that gets in the way of the martini.
So we'll give 3 questions only.
I'll lay it back there.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure. I'm emeritus at Harvard Law School, and I totally thank you for and believe in the vision that you describe for public education. Thank you for everything you're doing. My question is, since this is a conference about emerging school models and how fantastic it is that we maintain the momentum, do you think that the expansion of all the alternatives to public education is helpful or problematic in terms of the goal of improving public education? Because I myself worry that it takes away from the energy of what I think we really have to do, which is what you're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the easy answer is there is momentum across the country, and I think what happened in Miami-Dade, what's happening in LA and has been happening in LA, through great teaching, great leadership, the momentum is there. I do have one concern. I think that the choice world needs to a certain extent, regulate itself. And I was describing to the class earlier on today that prolific choice sometimes without some degree of regulation over quality, right, could be harmful to the movement itself. I believe in that. I know what good education is, what not so good education is. I know what good choice is and what it isn't, right? And I think that's a role that all of you can play. But I do believe, I was quoted a number of years back when we were rapidly expanding these public school, choice models. I was confronted with a question. I said, why are you opting to do this? Why are you in fact, going against the grain, unlike many other superintendents, and supporting this transformation. And I said, well, I think that the tsunami of choice is here. So what I know about tsunamis, not that I've ever faced one, that's why I'm still alive. You can't outrun it, right? It moves too fast. You cannot duck under it and hope that it passes you, right? You cannot outswim it. You have to ride the top of it. That's the way to survive the tsunami, is have a good boat and ride the top. And we decided to do that. Is that to the extent that we reinvent ourselves and offer high-quality options within our communities, right? And are able to actually partner and influence the distribution of those options, particularly in areas where kids right now have to travel 1, 2, 3 hours every single day to get to that great quality program they want. To the extent that you deliver those available options within the zip code of residence of the kid, as opposed to having 1 or 2 Taj Mahals in the entire community that serve only a limited number, then I think that is a positive thing. But I think some degree of self-regulation is important as well. Thank you.
All right, 2 more questions.
Do you want to choose?
All right, over there.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations on all of the amazing accomplishments you've had. I really do believe that you've made a big difference. I'm from LA as well. One of my concerns, though, is that when you talk about all of the changes that you're making and all of these achievements, it's all based on very old, antiquated ideas of what educational success looks like. So I'd love to hear about how and if you also plan to change how we actually measure success in our children. That's it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the easy question. Yes, so the easy answer is yes. So, however, America is not necessarily, and the systems and states, suited for a measure of success that transcends sort of what I described. That does not necessarily negate the fact that we are absolutely aggressively exploring other measures of success that I think make sense. But right now, right, the federal government does not tell you how to assess or which entity that conducts the assessment, but part of the funding you get, right, relies on the state adopting an assessment. So all states have some assessment. And that assessment measures certain dynamics of achievement, right? And then the way we even fund education, whether it is by enrollment or average daily attendance, there's a whole set of factors that currently compose the engine of public education. And you cannot abandon those. At the same time, however, you can create a parallel system that provides maybe a more honest, holistic, transparent way of assessing, determining success, and communicating that to communities. When I talk about national assessment of educational progress, or distance from standard, or 10 DFS points, or 23% increase in the meet and exceed percentage of students based on state standards. All of that to a parent who himself has a 5th grade education makes no sense whatsoever. So, if you want to connect with parents, you got to speak a language they understand. And right now, the entire system is built in terms of its reporting, in terms of its engineering and architecture at a level that is not understood by people. And I think that in lies part of the challenge, and that's why I believe in demand-driven reform. And I can go on a tangent to really explain that. That includes also different ways of measuring success, different ways of informing communities about what's happening in their kids' lives and their kids' education, their kids' classroom, their kids' school.
Got some great ideas.
Okay.
All right.
Paul, the last question, my God.
Now, Daniel, you pick.
Yeah, how about right over here? Yeah, I'm right.
It's you.
Tell me what steps in today.
I love that you said your motto or your dad's motto was wherever you go, there you are, because my grandfather gave me this little box that said the same thing, so that was very
they all
impactful.
went to the same club. They all
But I always think of it in terms of like all the things I'm not doing well and like how I'm going to still be that person wherever I go. I was also part of a large urban school district reform efforts starting in 2009 in Denver. I was the president of the school board in Denver Public Schools. And I also agree with everything you said and the lift that we did, the progress that we made. It's probably the proudest work of my life, and I was just a volunteer elected official. The sustainability of it, though, is what keeps me up at night, and so that we were not able to hold on to it, and it's completely shifted, and a lot of that was because of the politics, and a different board came in with a very different philosophy. So how do you grapple with that, and what do you think about the sustainability, and what do you think about, is there something we can do in the system to achieve that? Because I know how hard you worked in Miami-Dade, I studied it, I learned about it, and I certainly know in LAUSD it's gonna take, anyway, just curious.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, a freshman in Paul's class this morning asked the exact same question. Number one, I'm not doing this alone, right? There are a lot of believers with exceedingly high skill set and powerful, courageous will set. And I like to surround myself with those kinds of people. Secondly, and I reflect on Miami to answer your question. I was there for a long period of time, and that indeed is one of the challenges, is that superintendents, particularly in the largest districts, don't last very long. LA had 7 superintendents in 1 decade. That cannot be good. And usually, even effective superintendents that leverage communities, internal communities and external communities, to promote, support, enable, and implement a reform effort, if you're there too little, amount of time, when you leave, the effort dies. That's what we usually see. Because the effort belonged to one person. In Miami, it was different. The way we approached the work, the effort and the successes belonged to the community as a whole. And I think that, in large part, was by the deliberate creation of a parent academy that circulated 100,000 parents to create that demand-driven reform, educating parents on the stability, the health of the district, celebrating and telling the story of the process of improvement. Educators can be great educators, but we as educators are terrible at telling our own story. We need to be more like Lincoln, paint a picture, tell the story. We don't do it. We don't necessarily do it when something bad needs to be improved, and we certainly don't do it when we have successful examples of transformational reform. So I believe that sustainability of improvement only succeeds when the roots under the strategy are actually deeper than what's above the reform effort. And you need time for that to actually be realized. And you need to work not only vertically across the district, meaning there's a set of values that the superintendent and the school board believes in, and these are embraced by regional supervisory staff, and they're embraced by principals and teachers and support staff, the custodial staff, the bus drive, meaning everybody subscribes to it. It takes a while to create that cultural shift of accountability. We often talk about personal responsibility in a school system, right? And collective responsibility. No amount of collective responsibility is worth anything without personal commitment. So I need to make a personal decision that I believe in that set of ideals, I believe in that vision, I believe in that theory of action. So creating belief is important. And I do believe that the Miami-Dade success story was a function of early, compelling results. We produced results very, very quickly. Year 1, year 2, all of a sudden, those 10 schools that were going to be taken over by the state improved significantly. We were able to leverage that as a huge win for the community. Everybody could rally behind that. But then we didn't stop. It was not just creating conditions that would save these schools. Then it was, can we now beat the state? And then can we now beat the country? Can we now then become number 1 in College Board passing rate? Can we become number 1 in Cambridge? Can we win the highest number of Magnet Schools of America awards. And with each growing challenge to self and each win, we created more root. So by the time I left, and I say this with pride, by the time I left, two cool things. Lots of people that work with me are superintendents now in other districts. Secondly, in my absence, the district is actually better than when I left it. So the improvement continues. All right, thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
So the Charles Hotel is just across the plaza, but it's going to take a while for us all to move over there, get down the elevators. Unfortunately, you can't get out of this building. Can you get out of this building any other way? All right, so we're going to all have to get down that elevator, and it's going to take a while. Do you want to?
But the bottom stairwell is alarmed.
We don't have stairs here? We don't have stairs here?
Oh.